Also, so moving on to, we're kind of out of the safety element that at this point, and more into talking about some of the important gear that we might need when we are in the woods. One thing that I will always have on me no matter where I go is my rangefinder. Now, my rangefinder helps me judge the distance between myself and the animal that I am shooting at. Once it gets light out in a tree, first of all, this is around my neck, usually tucked under my harness as I'm climbing. I will bring it out when I get up there, when it starts to get a little light. If nothing's come in yet, especially if I'm in an unfamiliar place, I will start to check the yardage of things around me. I will guess the yardage first before using this as kind of a test to myself, because in the moment you might not be able to reach for this. Buck might come in on a hot doe and you have 30 seconds to react. You're not going to reach for your rangefinder when you could reach for your bow. So it's a good idea to kind of use this as a tool to figure out what's going on around you. With using the rangefinder comes the review of some middle school math, the Pythagorean theorem, right? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Your range with the rangefinder from the ground. So I'm at the base of the tree that I'm climbing into. I range that stump in front of me at 20 yards. When you climb into the tree and you are ranging that same stump on an angle, your yardage is different. It's important that you find a rangefinder, at least from my experience, that will compensate for angles. Not all rangefinders, are created equal in that sense. You will pay a little bit more for that feature at the cost of accuracy, right? If you don't. So this is definitely more important if you are someone using a single pin on a bow sight, and there are single pin and there are multi-pin. The single pin is adjustable to the yardage in the moment. The multi-pin, your yardage is like fixed, like you've already judged that your top pin is 20 yards, your second pin is 30, and as it goes. So this is something that I don't leave home without. Even if I'm just messing around shooting the bow in the backyard, or going to an indoor range or something like that, this is with me at all times. Jury is still out for me on binoculars. I have a pair of binoculars. I have a bino harness that clips in front of me. I have yet to really find a bino harness that doesn't get kind of in the way. We all have various, sorry, my dog again. Maybe you guys can meet him one day. Some of you already know him. He's a good boy most days, but he doesn't like the neighbors too much. So the thing with the binoculars, right, is that I personally don't like the way they hang on me, because my chest gets in the way. And if I'm trying to draw my bow and I have all of this stuff here, I definitely run the risk of letting a shot off by accident, and that's not what we want to do, right? One thing that I also will have with me at all times is a bow hanger. They collapse about this big. They have kind of there you go. You kind of jam it into the tree, use the leverage as that stays stationary in the tree. It's not staying stationary because there's no tree next to me. To kind of screw it into the tree. Once it's set in the tree, I will slide my backpack to the back of it with my backpack mostly open, at that time unless it's raining, so that I don't have to zip and unzip all the time and add to the noise. My bow will be right here in this part, hanging by the limbs. I like to keep it where I'm going to grab it. So I'm a righty, so my bow is going to sit in my left hand. I like to keep it close to my left hand, so I'm not reaching across my body to grab my bow. It minimizes movement. For any of us that also carry or have a pistol on them, it's the same thing. If you're going to draw, you don't really want to draw cross body, because that's just extra movement. You want it on the same side of the hand that you are going to use. I'm briefly going to talk about some of the scents and when to use them. I think this is a topic that is largely debated, and I can go on about this forever. I'm going to tell you some things that have worked for me. This is Sweet Red Apple from Cook's Fatal Attraction. This past season, I was hunting over some apple trees that had almost stopped dropping apples. There were maybe 10 or so still hanging on in the trees around me. Sprayed it at the base of the tree, sprayed it about 20 to 30 yards in front of me. Oh, and that's the other thing. Say goodbye to feet. Feet is no longer a unit of measurement. Everything that you talk about is going to be in yards. 3 feet equals 1 yard for perspective. So spraying it about 20 to 30 yards in front of me, knowing that that's pretty much my comfortable bow range. Sure enough, a group of does came in, stopped dead where I sprayed the highest concentration of that Cook's Fatal Attraction Sweet Red Apple. And we had venison taco bowls for dinner tonight before jumping on this webinar. So I like going with the natural scents that occur in the area. There are things like curiosity scents. My fave, nose jammer, they do the vanilla. Again, not a fan, but allegedly it is a curiosity scent for deer. I prefer to go with actual food sources, things that they're going to want to come into. Without that, will this work? Maybe, I don't know. Another thing, white oak acorn that Cook's Fatal Attraction also makes. I think that is excellent if you live in an area with a high concentration of oak trees. We did not have a really good crop of acorns this year. So it was, all the more important that we had that available to us to be able to use. It was a game changer. Deer scents, the glandular scents, as kind of, what you're going to be using during mating season. They come in all forms. There is the aerosol cans. I have a buck bomb here, doe and estrus. I also have a buck bomb here, dominant buck. They come in, they also come in scent balls, which you literally put into like this little dispenser. You open the dispenser and the smell comes from that. They come in sprays that you can use with scent drags and things like that. Some people, I'm actually, I'm going to explain this really quick. So male deer, when they're releasing kind of their glandular like scent, they have glands on the back of their legs called their tarsal glands. And what will happen is a buck will literally pee down its leg, and those glands, if you know the smell, you know the smell. It is like the stankiest, grossest. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not very pleasant, but the deer like it. So using the tarsal glands from a buck that you or someone might have harvested during the rut, that is going to be the most concentrated way for you to get that that scent. And what that does, if you use the tarsal gland as like a scent drag type of thing, it brings other dominant bucks to that area. They get all kinds of mad that another deer is in their space, essentially. I know I kind of just gave a very, very quick run through of that. But like I said, that's something that is a whole nother webinar series in itself, deer calling, scents, and attractants. And I'm just kind of showing you guys a little bit of what I have on me at any given moment that I am in the woods, literally just unpacking my backpack for you. There are different kinds and different theories regarding antlers and rattling and things like that. I don't know if you've ever heard anyone say, like, I rattled in a big buck. This is kind of what they're talking about. There are rattle bags. So I don't want to make too much noise with this, or we're going to light my dog up again. But in this bag, there are wooden kind of sticks that you smack together, rub around, and it sounds like two bucks fighting. What this will do is pique the curiosity of any other aggressive, dominant buck in the area, and they might come in and investigate. There was actually a time where we were hunting accidentally near some people who were camping, had no idea they were there. Nature turned the lights on, and there were people in tents like 100 yards from us. Okay, it happens. Figured it was a wash, but we watched, we waited, we saw what happened that morning. It was very interesting. They lit a fire. When I tell you that the sticks crackling from the fire sounded like antlers, like coming together, and that it brought in about 4 or 5 mature bucks to a crackling fire, and they literally stood like 30 to 40 yards from these people camping and just stared. And we're there like now 140 yards away from these deer going, okay, game over, campers, like you win. You got the deer to come in with a fire. If it was that easy, I would have lit a fire like 20 yards from my tree stand. So that's one way of rattling. Some people like the synthetic antlers. Personally, for me, unless I'm like gonna sit in a ground blind, these are kind of like cumbersome for me to carry around. They're pretty big. It's really hard to stop them from making noise, attaching them to your backpack. So kind of hit or miss for me personally on these. Again, everyone has their own preferences. It's just an option. And then some people go tried and true and will actually use shed antlers that they found from years before. The thing about antlers, fresh antlers like that, is that they do dry out over time. So you're going to get a different sound year after year if you keep using the same antlers to rattle. So that is something to keep in mind. I also, if I can find it, everything is in front of me. All right. There we go. Got it. Also, a doe bleat can. I probably use this more than I use the antlers. So if you just put your finger on the bottom and flip it. This is basically saying, I'm here, come find me. And Primos makes this. You can get this for like, I don't even know. It was probably like $8 at Walmart when I bought it. But this has brought in a couple of deer for us during the gun season here in New York. So I like to use it. I like to have it on me. Some people start with the rattling antlers as early as maybe the third week of the season, before the deer start to rut and get aggressive in that sense. They're in bachelor groups, the bucks. So they're traveling around with, 3 or 4 of their best friends. So I think it's kind of like a deer fraternity. And then nature just says, hey, now all of the sorority sisters that you've kind of been ignoring all summer, they're waiting for you. And they start fighting. They will use those sparring matches to kind of figure out what's on their heads. They'll like pit it up against each other. Remember, deers don't have mirrors, so they learn what they're working with on their heads from A, knocking into each other, or B, rubbing on trees. And again, that's probably a topic for another day. But some other things that I have in my backpack that are important, I have written down here, okay, you shot your deer. Now what? I have orange tape with me, right? And this orange tape helps to mark your spot, right? If you are tracking, if you're tracking a wounded animal, this will be a very good, indication of last blood or something like that, or simply to mark your spot of, okay, how do I find my way back to my tree stand? Something like that. I like having this. It's very visible, and definitely useful. In that sense, not necessarily the most important thing in the world, but helpful if you're tracking at night. We have a blood lamp, and this illuminates any sort of blood that you might find. It'll actually really help in cases where you don't have a lot of blood to go on. So important, but again, not the most important thing in the pack, but definitely something to keep in mind. I always have a pair of gutting gloves with me, and that's not like oh, I'm going out there and I'm definitely going to get a deer thing. That's no, I'm going out there, what if I have to gut a deer and now my entire wrist to elbow is covered in blood? It's not fun. Especially when it's cold out, to get all of that on you, and wind's going, and it's not a good time. These gloves, the orange goes straight up to your elbow, and there's like white surgical gloves that kind of go over that so that you have the mobility of your hands. They haven't necessarily figured out how to make them for small hands yet. Maybe we'll get there. They've been known to slide off. But if the people who make the gutting gloves are listening, women need smaller gloves for sure. Also important, your knives that you are going to be using for gutting. For my purposes, I really do like a smaller knife. This is the Peranta from Havalon. The blades, they are replaceable, which is nice. You don't have to spend a lot of time like continuing to sharpen something. They come right out, and you cut with surgical precision with these. Some people do prefer larger knives that have a gut hook on the end, and with the gut hook, you will literally get it around a small incision in the I'm going to say carcass, and pull, right? And it just cuts a nice straight line for you. I tried it once, wasn't really a thing for me. I tend to gut deer through a very small opening, which drives some people crazy, but it is what it is. The first cut when you are gutting a deer is actually the butt. You don't go straight for the entrails. You will actually make the incision around the anus first. And maybe there will be a deer gutting video in the future. Definitely not for today. I also like to have zip ties with me because in New York State, you need to attach your tag to the animal before you get it to a motorized mode of transportation or to your house. So if you are dragging via a sled, or if you are dragging with a handy dandy deer drag tool, this has saved many a smaller statured hunter this season. You literally just put the hooves in these openings, it tightens, and you pull with this. Fine for long distances. Also for those of us with trucks, if you need to stand on the bed of your truck, if you're doing this by yourself, you can actually hoist the deer up using this, and it's a lot easier than trying to use a sled. Some people swear by their sleds. I think sleds are great. I think sleds are better if they're pulled by a four-wheeler, and if you are attaching a sled to a four-wheeler, you need to have your tag attached to the deer first. With bucks, you can attach your tag to the antlers. With does, you're going to end up cutting an incision in one of the ears, and be very careful in doing so. I happen to know someone who jammed the knife into the ear of a deer, and the knife went right into their hand. So a very happy moment ended up in the ER. Thanks, Mom, for your shock and awe face. I appreciated that. It happens in those moments that you are so excited. It's really easy to forget I have a very sharp tool in my hands. So also when you're gutting a deer, some things to be careful of. Did I find my broadhead? Is half of my arrow still in the deer? Because you could be reaching in there, right, and there's a broadhead floating around. Do you notice any external injuries on the deer while you are while you're starting to gut it? Because things happen. Someone else's broadhead might be in that deer from a season prior, and deer are incredibly resilient, and maybe it healed over it, but now you're reaching your hand into a deer to gut it, and there you go. Being mindful of whether or not you broke a rib when you shot too. The bones, when they splinter, can be very sharp. So just some things to look out for in that sense. No matter what, please don't try to gut your deer with a dull knife. It will not be a good time for you. Working with dull tools is also very dangerous, incredibly dangerous, because you're applying pressure and you're not making an incision. It's a recipe for disaster. And I'm looking around at the table in front of me. Oh, okay. One thing I did forget. If you are bow hunting specifically, you need a release. I shoot a thumb release. I don't recommend them if it's your first year getting out there. My first couple of years, I shot a wrist release, which is literally a strap that goes around your wrist and you pull back. You won't be able to fire a compound bow safely without that release. Oh, Emily, hold that up if anyone can see. All right, perfect. There she goes. Okay, so you see it goes around your wrist, you hold it in your hand, and it has a little like trigger release where you squeeze it, don't pull it. And it's the same here. There you go. And it's the same here, right? This barrel is something that just the mere pressure from you pulling back releases your arrow. There are true back tension releases. I wish I had one of them to show you guys. I do not. I don't shoot one. I shoot a thumb release, and Emily was just demoing a wrist release for us. For those of you that could see Emily, I hope you guys did. So that is pretty much all I have in front of me right now, except face paint. I have face paint. I didn't show you guys this. So the joke is, it was a good day for me if I got into the stand and I didn't even have a chance to do my makeup yet. And I'm not talking about like blush, concealer, eyeliner, whatever. I'm talking about my face paint. There there are a lot of pros and cons to it. If you're someone who's prone to consistently clogged pores, I don't recommend it. But this was something that was sold to me when I was first starting out as like a fun arts and crafts project to like get me interested in going in the woods. It's now a staple and I don't leave home without it. So one of the things that I learned about getting new people in the woods, especially women, make it fun. Kids, things like that. Do something that's going to stick with them and become part of a tradition. And it sounds really silly, but I feel naked in a tree without my face paint because of just the way that I was, again, brought up in the woods, in hunting culture, and just being around all of this stuff. And more to be said on that is if something makes you happy and it's not hurting anyone, enjoy, especially in regards to what you're wearing in the woods, face paint, things like that. I think we more than men face a lot of criticism, not even from just men in the woods, but also each other. And it's important that we're kind of building each other up and supporting, especially our benign decisions like that aren't hurting anyone. They're just silly. They're fun. So that's all that is in my backpack. And some tips and tricks associated with all of that. I definitely want to open it up to any questions. I don't know if anyone wrote any in the chat.